Hi, and welcome to the Ask Box, a podcast about the glory days of Tumblr. I'm Allegra Rosenberg. I made my Tumblr in 2010, and I'll be bringing all kinds of cool people onto the show to talk about the fandoms, memes, events, and unique communities that made early Tumblr such an exciting place to be. If you want to leave a message with your favorite early Tumblr memory, you can call 240-4TUMBLR. Leave a message, and I might play it on the show. I'm really excited to have my friend Sam, one of my first Tumblr friends, as the first guest on my podcast, which is the Ask Box podcast.
I love it.
Which is going to be an exploration of Tumblr nostalgia for the golden age. We're going to start off focusing on, those halcyon years of 2010 to 2012. But I figure that as the podcast progresses, we may or may not move beyond that. Although after that, it just went a bit downhill. So Sam was one of the first people that I met on Tumblr when I joined in the latter days of my middle school years in 8th grade.
Someone asked me about 10 minutes ago why I have so many friends in LA. And they were like, wow, you're so worldly. And I was like, oh, the opposite. I spent a lot of time indoors at the age of 15.
Right. Oh, wait. So, Sam, tell me, well, I already know, but let's hear a little bit about yourself, where you are now, where you were back then.
I am currently in the city of Canberra, Australia. I am in my work's podcast studio, a thing that we have for some reason. I had to book in time to use it. I am in, I guess you'd call it grad school. I'm a PhD candidate at the Australian National University. And when I was 15, I was in Brisbane. Allegra put up a tiny chat.
Oh, God.
I don't think it had any purpose. I think it was just, so I was on Tumblr for, I guess, just something to do. I don't think there was really any reason. Mm-hmm. Although everyone had jumped shipped from LiveJournal. I think that's crucial to know. It was the new cool thing to be on.
Right.
Allegra just put out, I don't think it had a point. It was just like, hey, does anyone else like Doctor Who? Mm-hmm. Which is a broad question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's important. Okay, so for the uninformed, what is a tiny chat?
Oh my God. This is cultural knowledge I can't explain. No, it was a chat room online, and it was tiny because it didn't require any account or pre-setup. Mm-hmm. Clicked a room, you went in, it had a webcam, it had a chat room, you could make up a username. That was about it, right?
Right, yeah. So basically, like, a prominent fixture of the culture on Tumblr at the time were these tiny chat rooms where a Tumblr user would just post a link, and then their followers could just click and join and instantly be added to the tiny chat.
Yeah, it was definitely around Tumblr celebs, right? Like someone would post it and you'd just jump in because someone cool had posted it.
And you'd want to interact with them, and you'd want to interact with their followers, and sort of be part of something. And I think it's
the same sense as now people would post like a Twitch link. I think that's a similar effect.
Or an Instagram Live, but to that there is something different because a tiny chat was way more democratic than like a stream where it's like
that is so true.
When an Instagram Live is focused on
proper social media, not mass media.
Right. So Tiny Chat and Tumblr, and Tiny Chat as an extension of Tumblr was very community based because you could just pop on a total stranger and have your webcam and then just start talking, or you could do voice only, or you could do text only.
Or the mysterious voice only people in the chat.
Right. So yeah, I don't have any memory of this at all. But did we first meet in a Tiny Chat that I posted?
I don't know if this is true. I feel like this is a story I've just told myself enough times that I'm like, yeah, we definitely met in a tiny chat. I assume I was following you.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
And you would have posted it, and then because that was we called ourselves the Tumblr Whovians.
Yes,
but surely that wasn't a public. Oh man, I don't remember.
No, because we got. First. Okay, so this is going to get really deep really quickly in terms of like very specific stuff, but we got at one point, I think this was in 2010, and we had been sort of like, we made this big group of friends about, over Doctor Who, and we got at one point accused of being cliquey. Do you remember that?
The funniest thing. I do remember that. It was so funny. So what happened is you put out this tiny chat, which was so. Just how many followers did you have at that point? Do you know?
It was under 1,000. Maybe it was a couple hundred. My URL at the time was TARDIS Girl. What was your
Beautiful.
URL at the time?
I think it was Stardust Zombie, which is the worst. I hate it.
It's beautiful.
I hate that. I should probably check if that blog still exists. I should shut that one down.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's me when I was 15. Yours is all thankfully disintegrated.
Yeah, it's gone.
I'm sure you'll do a whole episode on that.
Oh.
But you did that. People joined. Then there was a group of regulars. So it wasn't clicky. It was the people who showed up more than once.
Right.
And then we were like, oh, we're all hilarious. We made a separate group to just chat. I think because we posted enough of our in-jokes that people were like, oh, this is another one of your in-jokes, I guess. It was like, oh, sorry, we're just trying to have fun.
I mean, and so the fact
that's Tumblr in a nutshell.
Yeah. So the fact that could become such a little miniature drama, I think really is indicative of how small the community on Tumblr was at that time. So you mentioned that there had been an exodus from LiveJournal. Was that specifically something you saw in relation to Doctor Who fans?
It has to be, because what else was I into at 14?
Right.
Is what I'm thinking. Surely that was what was happening.
Right. Did you follow?
I can't remember anything else.
Did you follow any particular? Right. Because I was thinking like something that would make sense is if, you followed one user or another from LiveJournal to Tumblr.
There definitely was some people, but I forget who they are.
Right.
There was definitely certain names that I would look up. I mean, I guess because I maybe only knew them by URL.
Right.
But there was a few people who I would go and find regularly. And then eventually they were saying, oh, look, I haven't been posting that much. I'm on Tumblr.
Right.
And so we jumped ship there.
That must have been around the time that the LiveJournal was like bought by Russians or something like that.
Yeah, which I only found about later.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like I looked that up and I was like, oh, that's probably why everyone was leaving.
But also there was a large sort of aesthetic gulf in between the format and the function of LiveJournal and the
it's so true. There was so much more effort, I think, in LiveJournal.
I was gonna say like Tumblr must have seemed at that time so slick and new and social and cool in comparison to
LiveJournal was very personalized, like MySpace style, making your own page. And I mean you could customize a Tumblr blog, but it was very much quicker. It was quicker. There was more sort of social. Right. I don't know.
But I think that
more going on.
It's interesting because I never really was a LiveJournal user, so I sort of came to Tumblr.
I was a LiveJournal watcher,
right?
Consumer.
Yeah, I mean, I had certain ones that I would check in on, but I don't think I ever posted anything on LiveJournal. I was never part of a community on there, certainly. So Tumblr for me was the first. Tumblr and Doctor Who fandom specifically was the first like online community fandom that I was a part of.
Absolutely.
In my adolescence. So like what do you remember, that first year, 2010? That was the year that Doctor Who Series 5 was airing. So Matt Smith's first season started airing early that year. And I remember I joined Tumblr and started catching up on Doctor Who before that season ended. It was still airing.
When was the BBC America? That was between 5 and 6, right? With all the filming in Utah and the cowboy hat. That was all for Americans.
The beginning of season 6, the beginning of series 6 was the stupid fucking astronaut fucking desert. I fucking hate that series. But series 5 was beautiful.
Series 5 was so beautiful. Oh my God. One sec. When was so that aired in 2010, right?
Yes. So
I think in 2011 I went to the Doctor Who experience.
I remember when you went, and I was so jealous. But
that's adorable.
So Doctor Who Tumblr in 2010, and here's something interesting that I thought about a lot. Doctor Who Tumblr in like the first half of 2010 still had so much of this sort of remnant and this leftover energy from the Russell T Davies years of Doctor Who.
Yes.
Like because there wasn't a lot of Matt Smith content yet necessarily. There was, one series, but there was, reams and reams of David Tennant stuff. And so what you would see in those days is this sort of slow acceptance of the new Doctor, but really still a reliance on the content and the in-jokes and that sort of stuff from the Russell T Davies
It was a similar
years.
energy too in how ridiculous it was. What I was going to say, what I remember is Crack.
Yes.
jokes, which is very much from LiveJournal.
Yeah.
And in poor taste now, probably.
Yes. Well,
like looking back, there was like some of them were just racist stereotypes.
yes, that's true. I'm interested by your characterization of that specific type of humor as coming from LiveJournal. I mean, not being familiar with that at all. Would you say that that was the case? That what we were seeing on Tumblr sort of that year was?
I think that. I'm trying to remember because I don't know if it came from LiveJournal, but I saw a lot of it on LiveJournal, so I assumed it came there first. In like they had crack threads. That's what I'm remembering.
Yeah,
because they split everything by threads. Like they had a meme thread and memes different to what we would consider memes now. They were sort of forms you filled out. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Like macros, like image macros.
Yeah. But they'd have threads for that sort of stuff. And I think that's where it started. But then, as you say, it took off on Tumblr because the mechanism is different.
Right.
And things can spread better.
The propagation system on Tumblr, I mean, just in sort of the fundamental mechanics of the reblog system, I think probably did as much to change about this what people were making.
Another podcast I was on recently about Tumblr. But I mentioned that Tumblr, I'm pretty sure this is on their Wikipedia page, right? That they invented the reblog or they took it from WordPress or something. I think they invented it or it was the first sort of implementation of it.
That's really interesting.
And it was wild because it was the first site that had sharing that worked like that. Like I think that was before Facebook maybe.
And that was before, I mean, probably before they implemented it people were doing it manually on Twitter, I think, but they didn't implement it as an official feature until a couple years in.
Especially like quote tweeting, which is what it actually is.
Like I would
because I had to explain it to people and I was like, oh, reblogging is like you just took the whole thing, but then you could edit all of it and it would just be on your blog.
Right.
and other people could see it and you could put it anywhere. But it held the trail of who had originally done it. And that was huge.
Absolutely. And I mean, going back to what you were saying before, like I'm still kind of fixated on this. I always thought that the very strange sort of off the wall energy of Doctor Who fandom early on Tumblr was a result of the average age of the fan because we were all really young.
True.
But now maybe it was a combination of that and the sort of meme culture that had been brought over in this great migration from LiveJournal that was occurring at the time. I mean, we were just fucking insane. Do you ever think about that? We had so much spare time because we were literally in middle school. So, I mean, this is why I know how to use Photoshop because I was making these like really bizarre GIFs of, David Tennant.
I had a job. So there's a thing, what's it called? GIF. There's some sort of GIF competition that is literally international and they run GIF making workshops and you can win prizes. And I was like, I could run a workshop. I could teach people how to make GIFs. Like, oh my God, I taught myself that when I was 11.
Yes.
That's crazy.
I mean, and also.
Oh my God. And for no end. No good use.
Yeah. Okay, so like let's go into the specifics here because I'm sure this is what the people are dying to hear about. What were some of those early memes in Doctor Who fandom that you remember?
My
because for
Matt
me,
Smith looked like a foot is the first thing that comes to mind because that was so stupid. That's not a joke. That is A, bullying, and B, extended so far. It went. There were so many jokes based on such a useless, tiny premise.
Right. Yeah, that probably started before people knew much about him as a person or as an actor.
It was just because he was a weird Okay, here's the thing. He had a weird Edward Cullen photo shoot.
I remember it next to the TARDIS in the black shirt, and it was not the kind of doctor that he turned out to be.
It was not what he looked.
That was like the announcement photo shoot that he did.
Yeah. And it was in the same time as Twilight, surely, about 2009. So everyone was like, who is this Edward Cullen looking motherfucker? He looks like a foot. And I was like, okay. And that was, I'm just amazed it lasted so long. I feel like that joke ran for years.
Oh, yeah. I remember Rose Loved Drugs.
Yes,
which was I think started as a comic. What? It was originally a comic, and that was the punchline. And it mutated. I think this may have been one of the first. If our theories are true, maybe this was one of the first sort of Tumblr native Doctor Who memes of the time. Oh my God! This was a 10th Doctor related meme, sort of making fun of his mopiness.
I remember that. Yeah. I remember that in the context of our Tumblr Whovians group. I feel like we mentioned that a lot.
We definitely propagated that meme very far and wide. There's something about like Was there something about like cookies? What am I remembering about cookies?
Yes, I don't know what, but that was
I
related.
don't know. I don't know what that was, but I remember it. And then
There
of
was
course,
also... Oh, I was saying like the racial stereotypes one were a
Yes.
whole range of like, that's proper meme. Like people
That-
were changing the joke, shifting,
Yes.
trying to get more confusing.
right.
There was
and
Spanish night. There was French night.
No, it was Mexican night. That's why it was racist.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
specifically Mexican night.
It was weird. Like,
and-
strange times.
Okay, and that was and this is something that I probably will end up talking about on every episode, but like just how the shift in like meme etiquette reflected a shift in the larger culture, or did the shift in meme etiquette then affect the larger culture? Because once
What do you mean by meme etiquette?
well, like that you can't do Mexican night anymore and Photoshop sombreros and mustaches onto Doctor Who characters as evening entertainment. And I think we were all literally, ages 13 to 16, which still to this day remains the average age of a Tumblr user, which I think is beautiful. And we were just, but that I think was before a larger shift. I mean, I remember when cultural criticism on Tumblr became a thing, and it was very apparent that it was having an effect.
That's so true. This is important to remember because I was speaking on this other podcast about Tumblr, and I was talking about, the discourse and people jumping on each other to prove their points correct or whatever. I think you're so right that there is such a delineation between those first few years and later. And I don't know whether that's because our cohort grew up and went to university or like grew up and went to high school, or whether it's because the broader group was changing.
It's such a chicken and the egg situation, because I did see that thread on Twitter the other day about how Tumblr invented cancel culture, which is now so preeminent in not only pop culture but just culture at large.
It's wild how slow things are going. Have you seen the stuff where people are like, "Oh, I hate those threads where people keep trying to tell me history in capital letters and like, sit down and shut up and listen to this history," and they're like, "We cancelled those back in 2012.
I mean, I think that Tumblr, that Tumblr as this sort of precognitive arbiter of cultural trends, whether that is as a result of it being populated by young people who sort of develop these ideas and end up, or whether it's just it reflects that. I mean,
I think it's a bit about the system of Tumblr which helped it, but like a megaphone. Like it's surely just the sheer mass of young people online talking to each other.
Yes.
And I'm sure that like, where are the youth now? Are they on
They're
Snapchat?
They're on Instagram.
They're on Instagram.
Unfortunately, they're on
true.
Instagram, which doesn't have nearly as much of like a community
It's so
focus.
visual.
And it's very
That's so
visual.
interesting.
I mean, I think Tumblr as a
Tumblr was very visual.
Tumblr was visual, but it also
clearly not as much as Instagram.
Yeah, it also had
and no ads.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They never could figure that out.
Wow.
Tumblr never really became commercialized, which I think is beautiful.
They really tried.
They tried.
I think they tried after I left. I would have gone in like 2016, 2015 maybe. And I think then they had ads and they were just bad.
Yeah. So I mean,
it was a bad experience.
Let us return to our focal point, or at least what I'm attempting to make our focal point, which is the Doctor Who fandom. Something that I thought was fascinating was to sort of observe in real time my first experience with like fandom wank and like fandom like hatred and like people dissing on each other for liking different parts of an episode that other people deemed to be
which
bad.
Is interesting because Doctor Who is one of the examples, barring like Star Trek.
Yeah.
Where these people have been doing this since before I was born.
Oh yeah.
Like there's that famous forum comment that is still online because it's from 1996 or something of Stephen Moffat arguing some point in a forum, which is my favorite thing.
Yeah,
so
it was
good.
like
People
a Google BBS archive, and it's like him when he was like 20 something, like arguing some.
Because even now, people are like, "Oh, we're getting presidential candidates who have been online," and I was like, "We've already seen this cycle happen with some guy who argued about Doctor Who as a young man online, was running it, which is so funny."
Right.
And his opinions were so nerdy. It was some like technical point he wanted to
it was
bring
some
up.
really just
So
like
funny.
microscopically unimportant thing, which is perfect. Yeah,
I know.
I mean, the whole rise of the Moffat hater on Tumblr as like a genre of person to be.
So This would be a wild ass thesis, but do we think that the cancel culture comes from these arguments, like the original arguments of people about not cultural critique, like literary critique? I feel like came from that nexus of analyzing Doctor Who and Sherlock.
Yeah, and specifically analyzing the way that Stephen Moffat treated like his female characters and his characters of color, which, like, to be fair, there is a lot of criticism to be made, but I think the people that grew up
People did not know how to do it.
Yeah, the people that sort of came of age in that discursive, like, milieu adopted that sort of, that tone and that attitude towards argument and towards discussion, which I think, yes, definitely had this huge effect. And also the positioning. Okay, here's something that I think is really important about Tumblr is that the follower counts were never public. So anybody could take a stance and sound authoritative enough to be reblogged.
Were they
at least.
Never?
No. Follower counts on Tumblr have never been public.
Because there was Tumblr already.
You can sort of tell how popular someone is by how many, like, notes an average post of theirs will get, but no, follower accounts are never public. So, like, I always had this thought.
So what was Tumblrity then? But that was ages ago.
That was before me. I don't remember that.
Okay, so there used to be a page but must have been 2008 or something that they literally had Tumblr celebrities, and they had a full page of
funny
who was most popular.
Oh yeah,
imagine if that was on. I mean, I guess it is. You can probably find it out on Twitter these days.
Well, I mean, and it's fascinating that they got rid of that and they sort of reverted to this sort of neutral state where anybody could take a stance, say something that sounded important, be reblogged by enough people to make it look like they were Tumblr famous.
Before you could search? Wasn't that a huge thing? They brought in a search that actually worked. Like, you could search tags. I feel like that was a thing that happened. You could track tags.
Yeah, you could always track tags.
I think that was a big thing.
Yeah.
No, I feel like at some point that changed, but I can't remember what changed about it because all of a sudden it became very important that you would tag things correctly.
Right.
What was that?
I vaguely remember that.
I love how things changed in terms of like how the comments worked because you couldn't use punctuation, which then made everyone talk in extremely long sentences.
Tag speak. Oh, and then they made the tags shorter.
Yes.
So then everyone just used a ton of tags.
Oh.
I mean, I want to have, like, you could really just look at things linguistically and see how Tumblr vocabulary and syntax has affected sort of the entirety of the
because
internet.
people make varying claims on this, whether like some people say, oh, that's useless, that's just how people talk online and it was reflected in Tumblr. Some people go the full other degree that it started on Tumblr, which I wouldn't exactly agree with. Like, young people online aren't going to use punctuation as much anyway, but I don't think it was nothing. I think it had some effect.
I absolutely agree. I think specifically phrases like I can't even, which 100% originate on Tumblr and then made their way to the larger culture. And like,
what's that from? Did it start somewhere?
It did.
Because it was I can't even breathe, wasn't it? Was that the full sentence?
It was like
what is air? I'm confused.
What is air? What is air was the
Oh boy.
Oh my god. I just fully flashed back. What is air?
Oh no.
Oh my god.
I feel very bad.
I should have called the podcast that. What am I doing?
Oh no. Oh no.
But like,
that's so awesome.
You can definitely I feel like if there was like a way to do this, which there probably is just like track the spread of certain phrases as they originated inside Tumblr and made their way to the internet.
You know what you should do? Are you going to do an episode on Glee?
Yes, I already have the interview lined up.
Oh my god, because I was just thinking that someone mentioned to me that Glee was one of the first examples of a group of fans actively changing what happened in a show.
On Tumblr,
in a very clear-cut way. Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't Darren Criss's character going to be not a cameo, but I feel like he was just going to come in, and I'm not going to make this a Glee episode, but people petitioned so hard and made such, like, they loved him so much that they were I'm going to
be talking to my friend Peyton about Glee in a couple
Wonderful.
weeks. And I really can't wait to see what they say about that in particular, given that they are a noted Darren Criss hater. So that'll be fun. Look out for that.
Yes. Oh, I mean, that's so exciting.
Fans have really influenced like stuff a lot.
Stephen Moffat hates his fans.
Yes.
As far as I can recall from that era.
And
people were like, you're treating women horribly. And he was like, what are you, a fan? Like, it's very fun.
I'm glad that
Let alone Sherlock.
I'm glad that Stephen Moffat didn't give a shit about his fans or his anti-fans because he is who
You can't
he
run a
is.
show
And
like that.
Right. I mean, and you can't run a show like that. You can't let it affect you. I mean, and for what he did, I mean, I think that he really turned it around. His last couple seasons I thought were amazing, especially with the 12th Doctor. And now I think
good.
it's so funny because I haven't watched much of the latest season, but it's interesting to see this reaction that's sort of like people looking back on the Moffat seasons and being like, oh, we didn't know what we had. Because
I know.
it's like a Stockholm Syndrome thing, I am sure. And in a couple seasons, it'll be back to normal. Like, after these showrunner transitions are always kind of janky, I'm sure. But it is sort of hilarious given how people sort of flung themselves at this door of sort of Stephen Moffat's, total uncaringness. He was doing the thing that he wanted to do his entire life. You have to respect that. And something
it's like my thing about respecting scammers,
Yes.
He got there.
You have to respect. Yeah, it's like the Elizabeth Holmes of Doctor Who. No, he's good. Something that is funny is just how on Tumblr specifically people took this stuff so seriously, and it's that didactic sort of pseudo educational, like, I'm gonna learn you a thing tone that characterized that era.
I explained this to a professor here. I was like, oh, the tone, there's a joke. It was in fact itself a Tumblr post, which was like me, nothing, a first year like earth science major. So this here is dirt, and dirt I will take, like, and it was just a long paragraph. I don't know exactly what it was.
Yeah.
But that was that phenomenon. And I was like, oh, that sort of person who learnt one fact today, so they want to tell you everything about it. And he was like, yes, do you mean every first year university student ever? I've met a few. And I was like, oh, that's true. That really was the sense. But a lot of them were still high schoolers. They were just,
I feel like,
precocious high schoolers.
2010, I think everybody was a middle or high schooler, and it was very
Everyone
rare.
was 15.
Everyone was
Even
15.
if they were 18, they were 15.
Right, and it was rare to come across someone older, and if you did come across someone like in their 20s, it was like a big deal, because I think a lot of those people were still on LiveJournal at that point. I think that the younger kids came over, or like me, like I just started on Tumblr, and
everyone by 2011, I think almost half my grade would have been on Tumblr. I didn't follow them all, but we would all be sitting there on Tumblr. Like, I also went to an all-girls school, so that's one thing.
It was a normie phenomenon as well. Like, a lot of my camp friends had Tumblr at the time, and there was this whole aesthetic Tumblr thing where, like, you didn't have to be in a fandom. It was Instagram, I guess. Yeah.
It was an anonymous Instagram.
Right.
I guess. / Pinterest.
Right. So I think
somewhere in that nexus.
The height of Tumblr as not only a fandom platform but a youth platform were, I think, those years, and it was definitely dominated.
Get someone on to talk about Tumblr University and DashCon. Get someone on board for that.
Oh God, yeah. I'll get into it. I'll get into it. I'm sort of just holding court. I mean, I'm ostensibly I'm going by themes on episodes, but fully expecting them to devolve. So, like, yeah, we are supposed to be talking about Doctor Who. God, that series 5 was so good. Can we just?
It was so good. I'm gonna have to
respect it.
I remember the 11th hour. Oh yeah, we were going to talk about the whole screenshot.
Yeah.
Economy,
Okay.
Where people would put up. I have nothing to say about it, but what a weird thing that someone would do with their time to run automated scripts to screenshot episodes and then put up screenshots just so other people could use creatively to get notes.
It's amazing.
That's
and
the whole system.
I think it's really cool, and I think it's a really interesting sort of area of, I guess, what people were doing artistically on Tumblr at that time, which was like visually dissecting media in that way and sort of just making new things.
Also sharing stuff like textures and colorings.
Yes.
And running shoots. What?
Yes.
How is that organized? That's
it's beautiful.
You can't even find that now as well, like as well done.
I think that Tumblr graphics culture of that era, I think was a holdover from LiveJournal in some ways, because that was a thing there as well. But there was this attention to detail paid. There was less. So I would say that there was less shit posting. Like, that wasn't even a word back then. Everybody was very earnest, and they took their watching of television very seriously, and their making of GIFs very seriously. Even the jokes were sort of like taken, very sincere.
Do you remember? This is a theme.
Okay.
Copyright should be a theme. People would make graphics and get very, very angry that they were stolen, which is I will accept that. Even looking back as a base level, that is upsetting. You've put it into something.
Yeah.
Then someone would bring up the fact that it is essentially breaking copyright to even do that in the first place. You were taking like stills from media.
Yeah.
And like from pirated episodes doing this and then getting mad because someone has stolen your content.
Oh my God.
I'm not talking like fan art is different if you're sort of drawing something, but people would have, even if someone would have gift a bit of a show.
Right.
And then get mad if they saw that gift somewhere, which is insane to look back on, where Facebook just grabs gifts.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean,
people took such ownership over. Like, they got into massive copyright fights if people would use other people's gifts or try to steal them for notes.
Yeah. Stealing
That
for notes.
is wild to me.
the notes economy at that time, I remember it was crazy for stuff to get like over 1,000 notes. That's how few people were on Tumblr at the time.
It's true. It's true.
I think that you tended to sort of know everybody in your little circle. But that's another thing about Tumblr that I think has remained unique, is the fact that it's kind of hard to sort of find people to follow outside of because there's no like, there's barely, now they have like trending and they have like search and explore and all that bullshit. But at the beginning it was like, you just like sort of went into the Doctor Who tag and poked around and there wasn't that
I
much
would love
to see.
to
So you
see
sort of
a
just
map
followed
of
everybody.
how insular the communities were. Because people would come out.
Oh my God.
You'd get messages that came to you and they'd be like, can everyone stop doing this? And you'd be like, I haven't seen that in my life.
Right.
Or like, can Tumblr stop doing this? And you're like, who's doing that? Where are you from?
Right. I think a recurring theme that has popped up and is going to keep popping up is the fact that Tumblr and its culture was so ahead of the game. And we're seeing stuff coming up now in other platforms and other areas that is like deja vu in terms of like, we fully experienced this and we're over it on Tumblr like 5 years ago. Why do you think that is?
I do not have an answer. I don't have an answer. But it's so true. I feel like, so some of the comments I see, especially on Twitter, I feel like Twitter's my main sort of go-to these days. Some of the comments is just like, I've seen this. I've lived through this.
Right.
Or they're like, whoa, the speed of meme creation these days is crazy. And I'm like, are you kidding?
Right. Yeah,
Memes could come and go in a school day.
Oh, yeah. Well, to be fair,
Actually, recently, there was an article which was like, students are now talking on Google Drive.
I did see that.
In high school.
That's incredible.
I was like, I did that when I was in high school. What? Like, how? I'm like, 7 years out? How are people just getting around to this? Maybe adults just worked it out.
Yeah. I think with Tumblr in those early days, memes did move slightly slower, though. And it was people had less of an awareness.
Actually, this happened as well. So talking about 2010 and how different it was to 2014, I remember they moved very, very slowly. Like, I feel like Mexican Night happened consistently.
It did. It happened consistently for a couple months.
Because there was
alternating with
That's
French Night. Yeah.
Yes. But by do you remember the meme? Maybe it was 2015. The meme of 2015 was what will be the last meme of 2015 because it was moving so quickly. Maybe it was 2014. But people were publishing lists. There was like some sort of separate Tumblr for keeping track of the memes. There was so many.
Yes. It was meme documentation.
We watched the speed. We watched the speed up over 5 years.
Well, there became a self-awareness about how that sort of thing worked. And I think in the early days when, we were still calling them macros, everyone was just this is what we do. This is what happens here. And there wasn't
also there would be blogs entirely for a meme. That is true. That's how slow they were. There would be whole blogs set up
like
for
the first
one meme format.
Yeah, the first Tumblr I ever followed was David Tennant's eyebrows, and there were multiple other Tumblrs devoted to David Tennant's other body parts. Because it was sort of glacial in comparison to what happens today. There wasn't really any current events. There wasn't any, gender politics. It was just 15-year-olds making, bullshit Doctor Who graphics.
I do remember when some big event would happen. I'm talking, humanitarian crisis.
Right.
And if you weren't posting about it, people would shame you for it. Maybe this was closer to... Oh, no, this was still when I was in high school.
Right.
Definitely. I forget what happened. Of course I do. Clearly I wasn't paying any attention. But it's the same as on Twitter now. If you're not posting about the issue of the day,
Right.
people are like, what are you doing? You need to get involved. And was definitely happening on Tumblr a good 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's happened everywhere forever.
Right. Absolutely.
But just because it felt like the one main TL, I guess. This was the public space, the public square.
Yeah, I mean, I think what makes the Tumblr feed different, you know, and what made it different back then was its sort of multimedia aspects, and also, you know, it was so curated. Like, I mean, I guess
also the singular aspect, I guess, that it just sort of came at you. You weren't really checking blogs.
No, you weren't.
You were just getting it thrown at you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the chronological feed is something that Tumblr, you know, notably has stuck with since then. I don't know how much it was necessarily new back then. Like, I think, like, obviously LiveJournal had a feed, Twitter had a feed, you know, stuff like that, Facebook, whatever. But there was something about Tumblr's sort of, like, endless content regurgitation.
I think it was also one of the ones where people would surely Twitter was moving faster, but Tumblr was the place that seemed like it was always constantly alive. Right. There was always stuff coming at you.
Because teenagers don't sleep.
Sit down, that's true. That's probably true. And it was so international, I guess.
I mean,
but you could go on and refresh, and there was just constant stuff.
It would just sort of, and because of the nature of like the multimedia posting of Tumblr, where you could have text and videos and pictures and music and whatever, you know, it just drew you in a way that other networks, which were solely devoted to.
Have they hooked someone up to, I don't know, like MRI to watch which bits of the brain light up on Twitter or Instagram or Tumblr?
That's
I'd
great.
like that.
You should do another PhD about that.
Study a bit of neuroscience, get that done.
Well, I mean, so like, yeah, the sort of hypnotic nature of the Tumblr feed, I think, was unique among social platforms at that time, and still has that effect. I mean, I think Instagram has probably replaced it, and Instagram took a lot from
Instagram
Tumblr in that way.
One. Unless it's just split text to image to Twitter and Instagram.
Right. I mean,
I wish you could actually watch the Exodus.
Right.
That would be really interesting.
But like,
that'd be not really a way to do it, but.
Yeah, the way that early Tumblr in particular you were just getting introduced to so much new stuff every single second. Like, it was just a very fascinating place to grow up, and also a great place to live blog Doctor Who on, where you would just post key smashes and then like photo booth pictures of yourself crying. Like,
oh, what a weird time. That really did happen a lot.
I remember, it's a great story. I went to camp. I went to camp for 4 weeks immediately after the first part of the 2-part finale of Series 5 aired. And I was prepared to spend 4 weeks not knowing what happened to the Doctor and the Pandorica. And I was so stressed out about it. It was the worst.
I think I remember this.
And I remember I put on my Tumblr, guys, I'm going to camp for 4 weeks. I'm going to miss the Doctor Who finale. It was such a tragedy. And I get to camp. I didn't know anybody who was going to be in my camp group. And I meet this new girl. And we start talking, and I think somehow we find out that we were both huge Doctor Who fans. So the entire 4 weeks, we're just like, what do you think happened? What do you think happened? Oh my God, what's going to happen? It was pretty sweet. It was like kind of adorable.
Oh, absolutely. I assume this was most of your teenage years.
Yeah, I mean,
just walking up and introducing yourself as a fan of Doctor Who.
Yeah, well, maybe like these 2 years that we're focusing on. By late 2012, I was into other things that we will get into later. So keep listening. I mean, but like, Sam, so something that differs with your experience of Doctor Who as like a show is that you were a fan as a kid. And I really didn't find out about it until I sort of got into this whole thing in 2010.
So in Australia, not just me, but in Australia, the original Doctor Who used to be on at 6 p.m. So instead of actually alongside The Simpsons, Doctor Who would just be on at 6 p.m. So like my mother watched Doctor Who growing up, not as a fan. It was just something that was on the TV. This is why Australians love and know Doctor Who. I hated it as a kid, but that's a thought I have in my mind from when I was 11. So when I say kid, I mean younger than 11. Because I watched, the first episode I ever watched was The Empty Child. And it was beautiful and the best show ever. And my mother was very gloaty over the fact that she told me I would like it. And I really did.
Aww.
And so I was watching YouTube videos, and I remember, this is the first piece of Doctor Who news I remember looking up online, who the Series 3 companion was going to be.
Aww.
Like, how far back is that?
That's far. That's
2007.
Like 2006.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I remember reading that on like a Doctor Who news site.
Oh.
In the music room at my middle school.
That's adorable.
I had to look it up because someone else asked me and I was like, let's find out.
That's
so funny. Wow.
Started watching Doctor Who at the tail end of my 8th grade year on the recommendation of some like random girl in my class who like loved it, and we were barely even friends. Like I didn't really know her, but somehow I let her sway me into watching this like sort of, this is the first show I ever binge watched. Really, actually, that's not true. I'll go to Blockbuster and get DVDs of House episodes, but this was the first show I sort of ever watched like completely front to back like that. I remember I watched it on watchdoctorwho.com, which is a sketchy site
that was a good site
to exist like about 6 months after I caught up with the series. And I think I watched it all. So by all, I mean like up to the middle of series 5, which was what it was airing at the time. Watched it all in like 2 to 3 weeks. Like
the arguments over whether you're a real fan if you started at series 5 versus series 1 versus the real season 1, which everyone absolutely forgot about because everyone was 15.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember when the drama started on Tumblr about people who were just starting at Matt Smith and were getting shamed for it, which is stupid because they made it so that episode was an acceptable place to start, like on purpose.
Yeah. They were explaining everything. What a stupid argument.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I just remember the show sort of just taking over my entire life. And here's a fun fact about me. In 8th grade, I was actually pretty cool, and I had a lot of friends, and we would all go to Hot Topic together and take photos on our digital cameras in the park. And then at the end of 8th grade, I watched Doctor Who, and my freshman year of high school, I entered not as the cool kid from middle school, but as a giant nerd. And it kind of ruined my life, but that's okay. Aww. That's just fine.
I was a nerd, but I tried to hide. Oh, no, I did not hide it at all. Wow. Yeah. No, this is just me. So no, I also, year 4, we decorated our classroom as a TARDIS. I feel like I've told you this before.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I did not like Doctor Who there. I did not like it at all. I didn't know what it was, really. But our teacher made us decorate our whole classroom as a TARDIS. And we did that. We won the Book Week competition. Beautiful. I don't know how it counted for Book Week, but it did. They let us count it, and we won.
Yeah. Did you like follow your real life friends on Tumblr at all? Because I remember that was a total like faux pas. You like weren't supposed to do that.
Some, but not many. And they're still my close friends. Is the vibe on that one? Like 2 to 3 people, and other people would see me and they would not ask. Like we'd be sitting at the back of the class, all of us.
Right, like you weren't supposed to ask people for their Tumblr if you like saw them on in public.
Like, no. Don't let other people know.
Definitely.
What if they're a hipster? You don't want that.
Oh yeah, hipster blogs versus fandom blogs. Good times. Because I mean, there would be girls like my age, like in high school, who were on Tumblr just like reposting pictures of like girls in jean shorts being like carried by their boyfriends. Which is like
you gotta have a hobby.
Yeah, or like really like aesthetic like photos with like bokeh lights of like streets and stuff like that. And then meanwhile, I was over here like madly like photoshopping, different Doctor Who
the
characters.
Sheer effort that had to go into it.
Yeah.
Writing 800-word essays about pilot episodes.
It was a beautiful time. It was a really good time. Thank you for being on the first episode of the Ask Box podcast, Sam. I think this is the start of something beautiful.
I'm really excited. I'll be listening along.
The Ask Box theme song is Full Screen by Adult Mom. You can find us on Twitter at The Ask Box. I'll see you next episode for an exploration of the early Glee fandom on Tumblr with guest Peyton Thomas. Thanks for listening. But nature